I haven't set foot in the woods in over 20 years. Not once. Not even driven through that part of Michigan. You know how some places cling to you? Like a smell you can't wash off. That camp, that goddamn scout camp, still clings to me like pine sap and dried blood. I'd heard of the Michigan Dogman before all this, some tall tale the locals like to throw around, about a wolf that walks on two legs and screams like a man. I thought it was bullshit, just campfire talk. But after that summer, after what I saw with my own eyes, I know better. Back then, in summer '92, it started with the howling. Not the regular kind, not the distant coyote chatter that comes in short yips. This was different. Low, long, almost like moaning. It rolled over the hills like a warning, bringing with it a deep sense of dread. Every night, just after lights out, it would start up, usually far off in the woods, sometimes frighteningly close, always the same note, combining elements of a howl and a deep, sorrowful scream. I can still hear it in my nightmares, even after all this time. The first night, we laughed about it, told ghost stories and tried to scare each other. But by the third night, none of us were laughing. Even the counselors stopped pretending it was funny. One of them, a guy named Mike, stopped going out alone at night. Even for quick trips to the latrine, he'd grab another counselor to come with him, always glancing over his shoulder like he expected something to be there. But no one was making fun of him. We all felt the same, even though no one openly said anything. Some of the kids started sleeping with their boots on. I remember because I did it too. Nobody said it out loud, but we all felt the same thing. Something was out there. Tyler was the first to actually see it. At least he was the first to say anything. He was 2 bunks down from me, kind of a quiet kid, one of those kids who always seemed like he was watching the world instead of being part of it. He came back from a dawn latrine run, pale and shaking. Said he saw something by the tree line. Looked like a weird dog, he whispered that morning, eyes wide. But standing up, on 2 legs, it was just watching me. Of course, some of the other kids laughed, said he was dreaming or trying to one-up the scary stories. But Tyler didn't back down. He wouldn't even go near the woods after that. Stayed close to the cabins, jumped whenever a branch snapped. The counselors tried to brush it off. They said it was a bear maybe, or a deer spooked by something. But we knew better. Bears don't howl like that. After Tyler's sighting, the whispers started. Other kids said they'd seen movement in the trees at night. A shape, a shadow. Some even said they'd heard sniffing outside their windows, like a big animal just standing there, searching, waiting. And the howls didn't stop. If anything, they got louder, closer, more persistent. Like whatever it was, it knew we were afraid. And it used that to drive us insane. It happened a few nights after Tyler's sighting. We'd just settled into our sleeping bags when I heard it, scratching. Not like a squirrel or raccoon trying to climb something. This was slow, intentional. It scraped along the outer wall of our cabin, right behind where my head was resting. Long, deliberate drags, then a pause, then again. And then the smell hit me. It poured through the cracks in the wall like a living thing. Wet dog, rotting meat, and something sharp and chemical, like burnt hair and metal. My stomach clenched so hard I nearly gagged. It was so strong I could taste it, thick and oily at the back of my throat. My heart slammed against my ribs so loud I was sure the others could hear it. The scratching kept going. I slowly sat up, careful not to make a sound. The other boys were asleep or pretending to be. I inched toward the gap between the logs in the cabin wall, just wide enough to peek through. Then I saw it. It was hunched down, facing the cabin, maybe 5 feet away, huge, at least 7 feet if it had been standing. Its back was arched like a wolf stalking prey, but its arms were too long. They ended in thick, black claws, one of which it was using to test the strength of wood, as if it knew I was watching. Its skin, no, its fur, was dense, dark, and matted, wet-looking, like it had just crawled out of a swamp. But it was the face that froze me, an elongated snout like a dog, sure, but too wide with too much muscle. It had these human-like cheekbones and dark, leathery lips that pulled back unnaturally, exposing rows of yellow teeth. including two massive, asymmetric canines. Its eyes reflected the moonlight, as if they were glowing, and they moved, twitched, like they were searching for something, even in total darkness. Then it hesitated, lifted its nose into the air, sniffed once, then again. I stumbled backward, knocking over my canteen, which clattered across the floor. By the time I scrambled back to the gap, it was gone. Just the trees swaying in the dark, and a deep, awful silence that felt like it was watching me now. In the morning, I told myself I'd imagined it, that maybe I'd just had a nightmare. But when we stepped outside, there were claw marks in the wood, fresh, deep, right where my head had been. It was only a couple nights later when Mike went missing. He was the kind of counselor all of the kids liked. Easygoing, funny, trustworthy, always carrying a pocket knife he'd used to whittle sticks into little animals. But I'd seen the way he looked out into the trees lately, like he wasn't so sure about being here anymore. That night, we heard the howls again, close. It seemed to come from just beyond the clearing, near the lake trail. Mike stood up from the campfire and said he was going to check it out. Another counselor, Rachel, tried to stop him. She said it was probably a stray dog, maybe even a prank by one of the older boys. But Mike just shook his head and grabbed his flashlight. "I won't go far," he said. "Just want to be sure." He never came back. At first they thought maybe he'd gotten lost, but Mike knew those woods like no other. He'd grown up around here. By morning, a search party had formed. Staff, a few older boys, even some local hunters. At first, they found only a trail of broken branches leading off toward the lake. Nothing else until late afternoon, when one of the adults found Mike's flashlight. It was half buried in pine needles, the plastic casing cracked, as if it had been stomped on. There was blood on the handle, dried, dark, just enough to prove something had happened. They never found his body. That night, there was no fire, no songs, no marshmallows, just silence. No one slept. The next morning, the camp was shut down. They packed us up without much explanation. Parents were told there'd been a bear attack, that it was just a precaution. But we knew. I knew it wasn't a bear. The buses came before breakfast. No warning, no ceremony. Just sleepy-eyed kids and panicked parents. Counselors shoving gear into duffels. Voices hushed but urgent. Nobody said goodbye. Nobody looked anyone in the eye. They told us it was over out of an abundance of caution. That a bear had become aggressive and Fish and Wildlife needed time to handle it before the camp could reopen. But we all saw the way the rangers moved when they arrived, supported by a couple of men in suits. Everyone had their rifles out, eyes scanning the tree line like they expected something far worse. When I got home, I tried to talk about it, told my mom about the claw marks, the smell, the thing I saw in the woods. She said it was a nightmare, told me to forget it, said I was just rattled by the counselor's disappearance. But I didn't forget. I still hear the howl sometimes. Not in dreams, awake. Late at night, if the windows are open and the wind is just right, I'll catch a sound in the distance. Low, long, mournful, like it remembers me, too. I haven't been back to those woods, not in 20 years, and I never will. Every now and then I read about strange things happening in Michigan, Wisconsin, even parts of Minnesota and Ontario. Livestock torn up, pets going missing, people vanishing from the edges of small towns. They always blame bears, sometimes wolves, but I know better. I know what's out there. We thought we were untouchable. 6 college kids with a long weekend ahead, 3 ATVs, more booze and weed than we could ever consume, and not a single adult in sight. It was supposed to be a perfect escape, ripping through the dirt trails of Michigan's Upper Peninsula, camping wherever we wanted, sleeping under the stars, and doing whatever and whoever we felt like. The cast was classic. Me, Mason, the so-called planner. Jess, my friend with benefits. Zoe and Devin, the hot and cold couple who'd either hook up or scream at each other by nightfall. And Lonnie and Chris, who weren't officially dating, but everyone knew they wanted to be. We found a spot off a narrow logging trail near a river, secluded, no cell signal, just the rush of water, the chirp of cicadas, and our engines growling through the woods. We set up 3 tents in a triangle around the fire pit, cracked open beers, and lit the first joint before the sun even dipped behind the trees. The first night felt like magic. Music thumping from the portable speaker, Lonnie stripping down to her bra and jumping in the river, Jess dancing with a bottle in her hand. Someone brought out edibles, someone else brought out condoms. There was laughing, kissing, stumbling into the tents. Around 2 a.m., I was half asleep, curled against Jess, when I thought I heard something in the distance. A low, dragging howl. Not a coyote, not a wolf, something deeper, thicker. But I was too high and too tired to care. I closed my eyes and figured it was just the woods playing tricks on me. I wasn't the only one who heard it, though. In the morning, over scrambled eggs and hangovers, Lonnie mentioned it casually. "Did you guys hear that noise last night? Like a dog or something?" Devin smirked. "Pretty sure it was just Mason moaning." The others laughed, but Lonnie didn't. Neither did I. She stirred her coffee and stared into the trees. "I don't think it was a dog," she mumbled to herself. The next day was all throttle and adrenaline. We tore through the trails for hours, climbing over fallen logs, splashing through creek beds, stopping only for selfies and joints. Everything felt normal again. The sun was out. The trees were tall and green and alive. Whatever weird vibe we'd felt the night before seemed like a leftover hallucination. That illusion didn't last. Around mid-afternoon, Chris came riding in ahead of us. He looked pale, shaken. He cut his engine and pulled off his helmet, eyes wide. "I found something," he said. He led us a few hundred yards off the trail, where a small clearing opened near the base of a pine ridge. And there it was, what was left of a deer, or maybe a coyote. It was hard to tell. The thing had been shredded. Guts spilled across the moss, tufts of fur scattered like confetti, and most disturbing, chunks were missing. Big chunks, like something had fed on it. "Wolves?" Jess asked, covering her mouth. "Not like this," Chris muttered. "It's fresh. And look," he pointed to the muddy edge of the clearing. A print, not paw-shaped, not boot-shaped, bigger, 5 toes, like a human, but longer, wider, clawed. "Okay, well, maybe a bear?" Zoe offered, but she didn't sound convinced. Nobody laughed this time. That night, back at camp, the tension was thick. We drank more than usual, smoked harder. Devin cranked the speaker volume too high. Jess refused to go anywhere alone. Then, just before midnight, while we were all down by the fire pit, we heard a scream, ripping canvas, one of the tents. We ran back and found Jess's tent slashed clean open, top to bottom. Nothing was stolen, just torn, shredded, like something with claws had tested it. We blamed a bear. We had to blame a bear. But Lonnie didn't say a word. She just kept staring into the trees, like she already knew. The next day, we split up for the ride. It was supposed to clear our heads. We told ourselves it was just a curious animal, maybe a black bear, maybe even someone playing a prank. I rode with Jess. Chris and Lonnie took the far ridge. Zoe and Devin went deeper into the woods, following an old, half-overgrown path Devin swore led to a lookout point. We agreed to meet back at camp by dusk, but only 2 pairs made it. By sunset, Zoe and Devin still hadn't returned. The sun dipped behind the trees, and the woods went too quiet. No birds, no bugs, no wind, just stillness. Chris was the first to say what we were all thinking. "We should go look." Lonnie refused to stay behind, so all 5 of us hopped on the 2 ATVs, headlights cutting through the deepening dark. We followed the path Devin had mentioned, the tires bumping over roots and sinking into soft mud. About a mile in, Jess tapped my shoulder and pointed. Devin's ATV. It sat half-submerged in a ditch, the handlebars twisted, one tire ripped apart. No sign of Devin, no sign of Zoe. We fanned out, calling their names. We didn't get far. About 30 feet into the trees, Chris found something. I heard him swear, then gag. It was Zoe's jacket, torn and blood-stained, caught high in the branches like she'd been lifted. Drag marks led off into the brush, and a set of tracks. Big ones, too big, deep, clawed, Not human, not animal, just wrong. We followed the drag marks for maybe 200 or 300 feet, deeper into the dark. None of us spoke. The forest pressed in on all sides, and our flashlights barely cut through the trees. Then Lonnie froze and pointed upward. About 20 feet up, tangled in a nest of black branches, we saw what we thought was a body, or what was left of one. Shredded clothing, something that might have been a leg, exposed bones. We couldn't tell if it was Zoe or Devon, maybe both. But whatever had done that didn't just eat, it stored its food. We didn't climb up. We didn't take pictures. We turned around and got the hell out of there, every single one of us sobbing and shaken to the core. We got back to camp confused and terrified. The fire burned low. Jess cried openly. Lonnie started piling rocks in a circle around her tent. Chris cleaned his knife. None of us could even think about sleep. And in the distance we heard it again, that howl. It was out there, not close but not far enough for us to feel safe. We needed a plan. Jess was the first to say what we were all thinking. We have to leave. Tonight. Lonnie nodded. We've still got 2 ATVs. We ride back the way we came and don't stop until we hit the road. But Chris shook his head. It's not that simple. We're 20 miles from our trucks. 20 miles of overgrown, winding trails full of roots and fallen branches. 8 river crossings. You flip an ATV out here and break something? That's game over. It would be suicide. He was right, and we all hated him for it. What if it comes back? Jess asked, her voice cracking. It will, Lonnie said flatly. In the end, we settled on the dumbest plan we could come up with, the only one we had. We built up the fire, higher and hotter than before, dragged over logs, broken branches, anything that would burn long. We pulled the remaining tents into a tight triangle and huddled together close to the fire. Each of us armed ourselves with whatever we had. A couple of knives, tent poles, a hatchet. Chris sharpened sticks into crude spears. We kept torches, actual flaming branches, within reach. If it came, we'd burn it or stab it or die trying. I don't think any of us believed it would work, but it kept us busy for the moment. We sat close to the fire, knees touching, ears straining. Every snap in the woods, every gust of wind made someone flinch. The fire popped, the trees creaked, and somewhere out there, just beyond the glow, we could imagine it watching our every move. We stayed up like that for hours, muscles locked, hearts pounding, waiting, and not one of us spoke the truth out loud. We were just meat behind a wall of smoke and wishful thinking.